Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to today's broadcast of the Kev Baker Show, right here on Truth Frequency Radio Network. And we are simulcasting as well. We're going out live on YouTube simulcast. And what a show we have got lined up for today, folks. This is going to be a good one. I've been waiting patiently for this show, and I almost made a mistake of it, because yesterday I had double booked a guest, but because today's guest is so gracious, we've been able to rearrange it for such a soon date. And I'm glad you could all be here, because today I am joined by one of the leading speakers when it comes to all things Nephilim, giants, paranormal, UFOs, spirituality, all this kind of things. In my book, A.Marzulli is right up there with the very best. And for anyone who doesn't know who L.A. is an author. He's also a lecturer and a filmmaker, and he has penned 12 books, including the Nephilim trilogy, which made the CBA bestsellers list. And he received an honorary doctorate from the series for his mentor, Dr. I.D.E. Thomas, who was the provost at Pacific International University. Now, he was honored with the Gold Medallion Award from Chuck Missler at the K-House Conference in 2014, and his series On the Trail of the Nephilim Part 1 and 2 are full-colour, oversized books which uncover startling evidence that there has been a massive cover-up of what he believes are the remains of the Nephilim, the very giants that are mentioned in the Bible. Now, LA has teamed up with film producer Richard Shaw to create something known as the Watchers series. And if you haven't checked that out, folks, you don't know what you're missing. There's 11 installments in the series, and Watchers 7, entitled UFO Physical Evidence, actually won the UFO Best Film and the People's Choice Awards at the UFO Congress in 2014. LA and Shaw took their second trip to Peru in January of 2014, filming ancient artifacts and megalithic structures at various locations, and also filmed the unwrapping of a 2,000-year-old mummy skull at Sir Juan Navarro's Paracas, I probably butchered that, History Museum, which was revealed in Watchers 8. Now, LA has launched a new series, The Watchmen Chronicles, and his first independent film was released in March of 2017. And today we're here to talk about his new series that he is working on. We're on episode 3 now of On the Trail of the Nephilim. And that is entitled Voices from the Other Side and Secrets of the Supernatural. So without any further ado, L.A., welcome to the show, my brother.
Great to be here, Kev. Thanks for having me on again.
Well, it's absolutely great, but what I'm going to do, Ellie, I'm going to restart the call, okay, because something's gone wrong with the size of the cameras and everything else. So give me 2 seconds.
Okay.
If you hang up the call, I will call you right back, sir, okay?
You got it.
There
Great.
you go. There we go, folks. Now give me 2 seconds, and I'll phone these two. I'll phone LA back up, and we'll get right back into it. Want it to look absolutely perfect for everyone here today, so please stand by, and I will be right back. Okay, if you're on YouTube with me, I apologize for the delay. Give me just a moment, and we will beam A.Marzulli back in to the KBS Command Center. It's going to be a good one, this, folks. I really hope you enjoy it. So let me go back to TFR Live right now first. There we go, everyone. I am back. I'm live, and let me add in today's very special guest, Mr. A.Marzulli. Give me a second. No, that's the wrong one. Let's see now. Okay, I'll do it another way. It's okay. Don't panic. Here we go. We'll get there, folks. We'll get there. Here we go. We're going back to LA right now. There we go, LA. How you doing, man? You there?
I'm good, Kev. How are you?
We're doing a lot better now, sir. A lot better now. Just resize this. Give me 2 seconds. There we go. We're getting there. We'll get there in the end, LA. It'll be worth the wait when we get there, right?
Absolutely.
So how you been doing, man?
It's been a real adjustment moving from California, sunny California, to the weather here in Oklahoma, um, which is extremely hot in the summer. It's kind of like the inland valleys are in California. But we live in the Santa Monica Mountains, and I was there for like literally over 40 years, 45 years in California, 40 years at the location which was our home until the fire came and took everything away. So we relocated in Oklahoma, and it's been working out, but it's quite an adjustment.
Well, I have got to tell you this, Ellie. I was sharing with you off air, but I have been blown away by this latest episode of On the Trail of the Nephilim. And I suppose it's a
Thank
bit,
you.
it really kind of weighs towards my confirmation bias into some of the topics that I look at. Yeah. And this secrets of the supernatural. I mean, tell the audience about this episode. There's so much I want to get into about it, but tell people what they can expect with this.
Well, what we did is the premise um, of the film was this: that if these really are Nephilim mounds, and you got to see the first two to really understand what episode 3 is. But the Great Circle Mound, Cahokia, all these mounds that go from the Great Lakes, Michigan, all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico. Excuse me. If these are really sites that were built by the Nephilim, in other words, fallen angel technology were involved, fallen angels were involved, Nephilim, the giants, the whole deal, then if that's the case, then we should see, and that's been the premise of it. If that's the case, we should see some sort of supernatural fingerprints left behind. We should see some sort of supernatural manifestation, and we do, and that's what the film delves into. And a lot of this was a complete surprise to me. I mean, and as we captured it on camera, we were at a place called Geller Hill, which is the highest place in the county, and it forms an equilateral triangle with two other sites, the Great Circle Mound and the Octagon Mound. All these sites were connected. And in order to do that, you need surveying tools and advanced mathematics. Very, very complex deal here. So we were there with this Newark Paranormal group. And, Fritz Zimmerman said, hey, these guys want to tag along. What do you think, LA? I said, sure, Fritz, that's fine. Just make sure we're not in the way of the filming and all that's well. So we go to Geller Hill, and we believe, Fritz and I both believe, that Geller Hill was a Nephilim burial ground. Giants were exhumed out of there, allegedly, in the last century. And so we're there, and it's raining. So I can't fly the drone. I can't use the cameras because it's raining. And so there's a forest about 50 feet, 50 yards, it's more like 50 yards away. It's very close, and the forest is all manicured, and there's a nice pathway that goes down into the forest, and there's a canopy, lush green foliage above us. So what this is doing is it's creating a nice dry area for us. So we go in there, and this girl, her name is Raylan Galen, she's got this little box that's called an obelisk. Now, I've never seen one of these things. I have no idea what it does. And so she turns it on. And all of a sudden, we hear the word evil. And she shows it to me on the obelisk. So the word is evil. We hear it. It shows up on the screen. I'm going, wow, that's kind of weird. What's that? And they explain to me, well, an obelisk has got 5,000 words stored in it, and it acts as a sort of a liaison between the spirit world and us here. It enables them to communicate through this device. And I'm kind of going, okay, I'm still really not putting anything together at this point. So we walk about, 50, 60 feet down the path, and another word comes up, and that word is witch. And at this point, I go, wait a minute. I know what this is. This is modern day necromancy. This is just like using a high-tech Ouija board. So I say, and this is all on film, and this is not scripted at all. We had no idea that this was going to happen. And I go, look, I can't do this, and so I'm going to shut it down. And so I began to pray out loud. And I just said, Father, if there's spirits here that are manifesting, we forbid them to do that in Jesus' name. We cancel the assignment here in Jesus' name. And I had this woman turn off the obelisk machine. So she turns it off. We wait about 30 seconds. Again, all this is on film. Then she turns it back on, and she's like waiting like this, waiting for the, kind of looking at the machine and waiting for it to kick in and see if a word kicks in. The word holy comes up, and her jaw drops, her eyes like completely bulge out of her. This is what she does. She looks back to the machine. She can't believe what she's seeing. So we go from evil witch to holy.
And Ellie, I must say, I was going to say to you, I had it in my notes here. It wasn't even so much, I could tell your surprise and you didn't really know what this thing was, right? I could tell that from your voice. But it was more Raylan, if that was her name. I think that was her name. It was her reaction, because here's somebody that uses this technology all of the time. And I'm somebody that watches a lot of the shows where they use this stuff. And the reaction that she gave was an extra confirmation that this was something really strange going on, but goes a long way to showing what we've said time and time again. If you bring forward the name of Jesus Christ, these things, they run away.
And they do, and we captured it on film. And, what this was high-tech divination. I mean, that's what it is. These little ghost hunter machines are just like taking a Ouija board out into a site. They are high-tech divination. So instead of, holding the little, whatever that thing's called, the planchette on the Ouija board and with 2 or 3 people, because you can't do it by yourself, or I guess you can. I don't know. Not that I'm an expert on Ouija board. But, when you hold the planchette and you go around, the thing spells off a word. Well, this is just one step up. It's got 5,000 words in it. And so the entity can access that because of the electrical frequency, and you're inviting it in. So, yeah, these guys were totally blown away. They had never seen anything like that. And I was blown away. And in the film, it was very necessary to do a caveat that in no way are we endorsing this type of conduct or this type of adventure, or, go out and buy a novelist and go out and try to contact. We're saying exactly the opposite. We're warning people not to do this. But the deal is, one prayer changed all that, changed the atmosphere completely.
And this technology, you were also using something called the SLS camera, and we've looked at that on the show before.
Yes.
Very much like the Xbox uses. And I remember my co-host Johnny Whistles, he had an Xbox, he had the camera on it, and he showed me how sometimes when he was playing the Xbox, there would be a stick figure walk into the room. Now, as much as these instruments, these tools are basically modern forms of high-tech necromancy, like you say, Ellie, wouldn't you agree that it's also good for confirmation for people out there who might not believe that the spirit world is real? They might still think it's all hocus pocus. When they can see something taking form in the room on these cameras, that's quite profound, sir.
Well, the SLS camera that was bizarre, because, this thing was 9 or 10 feet tall, whatever it was. And, we showed the before and after. My wife was in front of the SLS camera, and she raised her arm like this, and it's on the film, and you can see it. The image is on the SLS camera. So this is in the same forest, and this guy's got it. And there's this like 9 foot, 10 foot, this entity in front of this tree. Was that a grave site? Very possible. Very possibly, but that was a grave site. We don't know. And, at this point in time, I'm kind of looking at this thing going like, what is all this? Because I had never been exposed to any of this. And it was quite interesting. But that's sort of a tip of the iceberg to the whole show, because what we uncover, in my opinion, is proof that these are, at least they're charged sites. Are they Nephilim? Well, that's what I believe, okay? Can I prove that? Be great to get a 12-footer or a 9, 10-footer out of one of these sites. That would change the dialogue. But, in the second film, Mathematical Mysteries, dare I show it here on camera, but in the second film, what was interesting about this, we show that there's trigonometry, geometry embedded in these mounds, and Native Americans didn't have this stuff, Kev.
Yeah.
They just didn't. They didn't travel in advanced geometry, trigonometry. And the Octagon mound, for instance, is built on an 18-and-a-half-year lunar cycle. And if any of your fans out there are amateur astronomers please shoot me an email at la@marzulli.net. This is the smoking gun. This is the elephant in the room, which I'm reading this book by A. Tom. It's incredibly complex, and it's high math, and I'm horrible at math. So
You and me
I
both. And
yeah,
one
I mean,
one of the
he
things
talks
that
about the
yeah, one of the things.
azimuth.
Sorry, one of the things that it kind of ties in with this, and I'd noted down as well. We've all heard of sacred geometry. I think everyone's heard of that here on the show. But sacred geography, I like this one, Ellie. This is something I heard you talking about, and it ties in with what you're saying here. And there's no way people in ancient times could have a grasp on getting perfect, triangles, the kind of technology that would require. So I think you're going a long way to proving that they are Nephilim sites. They're most certainly supernatural sites. And I would go as far as to say that they're not natural vortexes, or maybe the Nephilim have manipulated natural vortexes. They've opened portals there, Ellie. Big time.
Absolutely. I mean, we think that there's gateways, there's portals. These are ritualistic sites. Blood sacrifice was done on these sites. Human sacrifice was done on these sites. And I want to get back real quickly and just touch on the idea that it's built on an 18 and a half year lunar cycle. And what most people don't understand, let me just get this text off to my wife. I'm on a show. There you go. She two things at once, can't do it. What most people don't understand is the Octagon Mound is built on an 18 and a half year lunar cycle. Stonehenge, England, is built on an 18 and a half year lunar cycle. America's Stonehenge in New Hampshire is built on an 18 and a half year lunar cycle. Poverty Point in Louisiana, the second largest mound in the Americas, is built on, drum roll please, an 18 and a half year lunar cycle. So the question is, in order to know that the moon has an 18 and a half year lunar cycle, in other words, it waxes and wanes and waxes and wanes, and does this repeatedly for 18 and a half years before it repeats itself. The question is, let's go back 3,000 years. And we're in the Americas, supposedly. And how does the megalithic man at Stonehenge, which is also, like I mentioned, built on an 18 and a half year lunar cycle, they've got nothing to write on, per se, deer hide, right? I mean, they've got maybe some crude utensils. They don't have any telescopes or any type of surveying tools. So they put a stake in the ground or a rock, and they use that as a point. And then way in the distance, they have, let's say, a ridge line of two mountains, and they sight that, and that's their sight line. So the moon comes up, and then they look at that, and then the moon does its thing, and it comes up to its highest point, zenith, and then slowly sinks down to its lowest point, it's nadir. So how do they record that? Stakes in the ground with notches, which is what some archaeologists, anthropologists, astronomers looking into this, that's what they postulate. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt. So now we got a lot of stakes in the ground, and we've done 30 days, and we see that the moon is waxing and waning. It's coming up at a slightly different place and going down at a different place. But guess what, Kev? We get a front moves in, and we get 5 days of rain, and you can't see the moon. So we have no idea what the moon did in those 5 days. So added to that is a person trying to track this has no idea, first of all, that's an 18 and a half year lunar cycle. And he or she jumping into this doesn't know, are we in year 3 of the lunar cycle, year 8, year 15, year 1? Nobody knows. And then how do you compute and keep all that data together? So when you finally go, oh, wait a minute, we were here 18 and a half years ago. Get where I'm going with this?
Absolutely.
And, the book I'm reading, which is extremely complex, again, no one has any type of telescopes or anything like that during the megalithic. So it really creates a problem. And the fact that all these sites are built on an 18 and a half year lunar cycle, to me, is a smoking gun. But wait, it gets better. In the book of Enoch, found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, it talks about these fallen angels coming down the Mount Hermon in the days of Jared. This is before the great flood which covered the earth. And they gave knowledge to mankind. Well, one of these fallen angels that came down, and you can read it for yourself online, Book of Enoch, R.H. Charles, I think it's chapter 6. You can go in there, and at the very end, there's a fallen angel by the name of Sariel. And it states in the Book of Enoch that this fallen angel, Sariel, gave the knowledge, the lunar calendar, and the knowledge of a lunar procession to mankind. So in other words, the information was handed to us. Here, this is what's going on. And I think and maintain that these sites are fallen angel technology, Nephilim architecture. There's something else going on here that mainstream archaeology and anthropology doesn't want to touch with a 10-foot pole.
Absolutely. That's like I was telling you about the site that's up near Inverness, where I'm from, Clava Cairns.
Yes.
That they say it's an ancient Pictish burial site. They then go on to admit they've never excavated to find any of the bones. But as I was sharing with you, and the listeners here, most of them will have seen the pictures I posted, some of the stones in there, I mean, this is akin to Stonehenge, Ellie. It truly is. And they're saying these primitive peoples, that they were able to, do all of this. And I counted round the main mound, and there happens to be 12 stones round there. Now, for me, it's some kind of calendar site. There was definitely something more going on. But of course, the Scottish Tourist Board and the Heritage Society, no, it's just a Pictish site, nothing to see here. You need to get to Scotland, dude. You do.
Well, maybe in the spring or the fall of next year. But yeah, you're right. I need to go there.
And when you look at even our mythology over here in the UK, where you've been recently, these stories, countless stories of giants, they've not just been like tall tales, if you pardon the pun. These are referring back to actual historic events. So what's your opinion on that?
Well, in my opinion, the giants migrated out of the Levant to Crete, to Sardinia, to Majorca, to Spain, to France, to England, and then over here. I mean, there's this migration, which we believe, that's why you see all these sites are connected. I think there's a real connectivity between all these sites. And, where do these legends of giants come from? And I think they're rooted and based in fact. They're rooted and based in the historical narrative. See, Native Americans, First Nation people over here, they talk about the red-haired, six-fingered giants that roamed America. And it's all in their oral tradition. But the anthropologists and the archaeologists, oh, no, we can't accept that. You don't have a written language. Well, they have an oral history. And the oral history, in some ways, is perhaps even more accurate than a handwritten record, because that oral history is passed down one generation to another. So they talk about it. We were in Spain at a place called Menga. It's the largest dolmen in all of Spain. I mean, we shot 30 hours of film on 24 days of shooting. And that's, a lot of travel. We went to Portugal, Spain, France, and then the UK. And we went to a lot of different sites. And some of what we discovered there was absolutely mind-blowing. But when you go to Menga and you look at the precise way that these stones were laid down, it's mind-boggling. And these guys insist that, primitive man had sleds and wedges and ropes and they used oxen and all this other stuff. Well, just show me. Why is it that all this just goes away? Why did they stop doing it? And they have no answer. Well, they got tired of doing it? Really? Is that what it is? Or that the people that make them weren't really people at all and they moved on to other places? Or perhaps they were warred against by normal human beings? Or perhaps God intervened in the way that we read about in the biblical narrative, like Sodom and Gomorrah, like the angel who wipes out 180,000 Syrians. And that would be my proof text, that God allows this stuff for a period of time, and then he intervenes, just like he's about to intervene in this world, and I hope it's soon.
Absolutely, brother. So let people know where they can find the Nephilim series and how they can keep in touch with all of your work, Ellie.
Yeah, you can just go to the website, A.Marzulli.net. We've got the first one, Mysterious Mound Builders, on Vimeo. And, what I would love to do, Kev, is try to work something out with you where, you guys could really advertise it over there or something. And if that's the case, I would put it up on Vimeo. I put all three up on Vimeo.
Absolutely. Now, we'll be back after the break, folks. Give me 3 short minutes. We'll be right back. Now, Ellie, we're still live on YouTube right now, so we can't, do our usual and start swigging whiskey and having a party and things like we usually get up to. But, no, this is really fascinating stuff. And, when we come back after the break, I'm going to be asking you about some of the paranormal activity that a certain Pastor Tom Olson has witnessed.
Sure.
Yeah, if that's okay, because I don't want to give too much of this away, folks, because I was really impressed by this today. And again, it kind of links a lot of the subjects that we talk about here with this very real topic of the Nephilim. And I think, Ellie, with the work you're doing and others out there, you are going a long way to proving the existence of this race of fallen ones, hybrid beings. And like you said there, just towards the end, something stepped in, something intervened and put them away the first time round. And when you look at the world now, the way we're going with technology, creating hybrids, people talking about humanity 2.0, we must surely be on the cusp of some other kind of reset coming in here, right?
I honestly think that we're at the point of a reset, and I think it has to do with the whole UFO disclosure, which is all of a sudden ramping up out of nowhere. And we saw that in 2017 on Tucker Carlson in the United States. And this is not, this isn't George Norrie's show, which I've been on numerous times. And I love George, coast to coast. This isn't coast to coast. This is Fox News. And it's not at 1 o'clock in the morning. It's like at prime time. And they trot this guy out, Commander David Fravor, who, starts discussing the manifestation of a Tic Tac shaped UFO, which he then, when asked, what did you think, where do you think it was from? And Fravor looks right at the camera, national TV, millions of people watching, and goes, whatever this was not of this world. And that was the impetus, shameless plug here, but that's the impetus for the book.
It's not a shameless
UFO
plug.
disclosure.
I encourage your shameless plugs, Ellie. That's my way of helping to repay you the time that you take to come and speak on various shows. And I love when you come to speak here. And obviously, before I let you go away today, when we get back into it on the other side with the TFR audience, we'll speak about the next installment of the series as well. You see, folks, Ellie is tireless. He's prolific. It's nonstop. I don't know how you keep going, man.
I don't either, actually. I need a break. I need a vacation.
Definitely.
It's been a heck of a year.
Definitely. Now, all of the audience out there, we've got about nearly 250 here on YouTube watching live. We've got thousands over on TFR. So I really encourage people. I personally, I'm telling you, I watched this today. It's absolutely brilliant. You'll get to see what myself and Ellie were talking about with the Ovulus. And some of the people that you speak to in the DVD as well, Ellie, absolutely brilliant. Totally brilliant, man.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Thanks, Kev.
Now, we're going to bring back the network in just a moment, folks. But in hour number 2 of the show, Scotty Lopez is going to be joining me. And then in the final segment of the show today, we had a caller that called into the show right the last minute yesterday. And we barely got time to talk about his experiences with the paranormal, with shadow entities. And I'm going to be opening up the phone for that caller again in the final segment of the show, because experiences like that, it ties in with the times that we're living in today and the portals that seem to be reopening right now. So I'm just watching the clock here. I'll bring us back to the network in just a second. Here we go. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're live with me, Kev Baker, and my very special guest today, A.Marzulli. And we're talking about On the Trail of the Nephilim, Episode 3, Voices from the Other Side, Secrets of the Supernatural. And it's this supernatural element I want to kind of get you into here, Ellie, if you don't mind. And you were speaking to various people in the DVD that I recommend to everyone. Check it out. You go and find it on lamarzulli.net. But one individual stood out for me, and it was somebody called Pastor Tom Olson. Talk to us about the pastor, where he is, and what he's experienced.
Well, Pastor Tom, um, when he got wind of what we were doing, he allowed us to host a conference at his church. And he was a Lutheran pastor. He still is. He's no longer at that church in Newark, Ohio. But he allowed us to come in there and hold our first conference there. And the reason for that was he had experienced everything that we're talking about. And this man was writing as fast as he could, taking notes when Russ Dizdar spoke, and myself and Chief Joseph Riverwind about all these different things. Well, Pastor Tom comes on the record, and it's his testimony is brought to life by CGI, computer generated imagery, which is done by Wesley Sangiorgi, who's been with us for all of our films, all 6 films. Wes has had a hand in creating CGI for us. So Pastor Tom starts talking about accounts that he actually experienced, situations that he experienced. There were parishioners, congregants who had built homes either on a mound or next to a mound. And for instance, one of the more chilling ones, they had a crawl space, and they would open the door to the crawl space sometimes, and it would just be a crawl space. It would just be like a normal everyday crawl space. Other times they would open the same door to the same crawl space, and there'd be a bottomless pit there that would just go down, 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 and they would throw things in it, and they would never hear it hit the bottom. How's that possible? Well, it's not possible. People would see at another location ghost wolves. There are no wolves in Ohio, okay? There used to be, not anymore. And they're not coming down from Canada. So, it's like ghost wolves. They were like shine and shimmer and then appear and disappear. All sorts of weird stuff. Pastor Tom told us that there was a woman who was involved in necromancy. Her boyfriend had been killed in an automobile accident, and she was trying to contact this person. And as a result of that, they opened up stuff. And what happened was he walked in to basically do a deliverance of this one house and the people involved in it. And he walks in and the table's levitating off the ground. I mean, what do you do with that? So, the supernatural is real. These sites are highly charged ritualistic sites. And, one of the more interesting facets of the film, and again, we're just hitting high points. There's a lot of information. A lot of people weigh in on what we uncover. Dr. Michael Lake talks about it. Ryan Peterson has written a book about the Nephilim. He weighs in on it. So you got experts in some ways. Russ Dizdar weighs in on it, expert in the supernatural. You've got these people weighing in and discussing it in depth, what we're showing. But the Mayan elders in 2011, before the 2012 end of the world, which of course never happened, the Mayan elders took 13 crystal skulls and they came to the Americas, and they performed rituals at many of these sites. And we show a clip where the entire place is just being lit up. Everybody, there's like hundreds of people going, like that. Except when you get 100 people doing this thing, it's like a buzzing noise. And I mean, did they open a gateway there? I don't know, but I would say that they did. And why are the Mayan elders there? Because they know what that site is, and they know what happened at that site. We've got Chief Joseph Riverwind, who's in all of our films so far with the Mound Builders films, although he's not in a DNA film, number 4 that I'm working on. But the chief talks about the Mayan elders coming in, and the reason why they're there, they know what the site was. They know exactly what they're doing. It's deliberate. But see, the Christians who should be taking over these sites, praying against them, not destroying them, but praying against them and dedicating the land to the Lord type of thing. For the most part, we're out to lunch. But the Mayan elders know, and they truck all the way up here from, Central America, whatever, with the 13 crystal skulls, and they're performing rituals on this site. Why? Call in the old ones, call back the sky gods, open up the gates, open up the portals, and that's what they're doing.
I think that's a huge piece of this. I was quite blown away when He showed that in the actual documentary. And like you say there, I mean, if they're going to these lengths to get the 13 crystal skulls up to any location where they're wanting to do a ritual, that has to raise red flags, folks. It truly does. And I think when we look around the world, Ellie, and you're as well versed as anyone in this, be it from the UFOs to the paranormal that I'm going to be speaking about later on the show with somebody phoning in, these portals, they're opening up everywhere around the world. And, you know, not even just the ancient sites, I don't think. It's as if the veil between this world and the next, it's like Swiss cheese now. And the paranormal's becoming the normal, Ellie.
Yeah, I mean, we get stuff all week long from people that are having experiences, whether it's black-eyed kids, UFOs, shadow people. I mean, the list goes on. And you know, people call in because they're looking for help and they're trying to figure out what's going on in their lives. And that's the part that many people don't see, but that's what happens here. And we talk to those people and tell them what we think it is. And sometimes we give them free books and free DVDs just to try to help them to cope with what they're looking at. I'll give you one example. A couple of weeks ago, a woman sent me pictures of UFOs that were hovering over the ocean where she lives. There were 5 of them. And 2 of these UFOs were like this, and they were exchanging energy. You could see it very plainly on the film, very plainly. There was some sort of energy exchange. This woman was a Christian, had been a Christian all her life, and she didn't know how to deal with this, Kev. She was like taken aback by what this was. She didn't know what this was. In other words, there was nothing in her grid, nothing in her worldview that she could process the information. So we sent her this book, the UFO Disclosure book, and also the film in their own words, which talks about UFO encounters and what these things are. You know, I was just at the Branson conference and Steve Quell put that on in Branson, Missouri. 3,000 people were there. It was an incredible conference. I spoke for an hour and a half, and the message was, you will not be deceived. You know, Jesus warns us that even the elect would be deceived if that were possible. Now, that's a 2,000-year-old prophecy that he's talking about. That's not a feel-good message. Well, what are you talking about here, Jesus? Even the elect would be deceived if that were possible? So in other words, something is coming, and it's future from when Jesus uttered this almost 2,000 years ago to where we are now in the timeline, okay? So we're here, and stuff is happening. UFOs are real, burgeoning, and not going away, and now they're being talked about. So what is the coming great deception? What is Jesus pointing to that you will be that even the elect would be deceived if that were possible? And this is the whole idea that we were seated here by extraterrestrials. Now, the ancient alien guys, every Friday night, that's what they promulgate. And that's why this new DNA film that we're doing, at the very onset of the film, I'm in front of the camera and I state that the reason why we're doing this is to push back against the prevailing narrative and to show you that there's another narrative which is completely overlooked, and that narrative is a biblical one. And we're not beating people over the heads with a Bible. We're just saying, hey, all this has been written down, and we're talking. See, people have no idea what the Bible really is. Bible just means book. What it really is a guidebook to the supernatural. That's what it is. It shows us in great detail how the supernatural interfaces with mankind. There's a thread of prophecy that goes through from Genesis to the book of Revelation. No other book on the planet has that type of prophetic thread that goes on, written by 40 authors over a period of a couple of thousand years. Are you kidding me? And yet, as the late Chuck Missler used to say, we find now that it's an integrated message system. In other words, everything, the message dovetails together. It's integrated, it links together, and is presented as a whole. You have to approach the Bible in a holistic way. And I don't mean that in a new age sense. I'm just using that term, what it means. The entire Bible has to be looked at. And you just can't cherry pick one book or one thing. It's integrated. It all comes together. So the fact that Jesus warns us that even the elect would be deceived, or that were possible, back to Branson, I had the 3,000 people stand up at the end of the presentation, and they yelled at the top of their lungs, I will not be deceived. And that's what the whole point of my hour and a half topic and presentation was about, that this is a real phenomenon. It's being rolled out now by the deep state, by the Luciferian agenda, the Luciferian elite, and this is the coming great deception. And people will leave their faith and believe the lie, which is exactly what Scripture tells us will happen.
And these elites that are rolling this out, and it is a program, folks, these are the same elite, the satanic Luciferian elite here that Ellie's talking about, that are basically paying homage to and conducting rituals to the same things, the same powers and principalities that you're talking about from ancient times, Ellie.
Well, I mean, this is, people have to understand that we are so far down the rabbit hole right now. There's no going back. I mean, there just is no going back. We are so far down the rabbit hole. And, again, to reiterate, kind of, because our time is drawing, to an end here soon. But the first rung on the ladder of disclosure was Commander David Fravor saying that whatever he saw, this tic-tac shaped UFO, was not of this world, direct quote. The second rung on the ladder, and between the first run and the second run, Tucker Carlson had a series of people like Nick Pope from the UK, who was talking about the whole UFO phenomenon. And Leslie, I can't think of her last name, she was on there, wrote a great book about UFOs. And other people talking about the phenomenon. So the second rung on the ladder was when Luis Elizondo is asked by Tucker Carlson, Mr. Elizondo, in your opinion, does the United States government have in its possession wreckage from a crashed UFO? Elizondo looks right at the camera and says, yes. And then Tucker reiterates the question, are you saying that the United States has debris from a crashed UFO? And then Elizondo does this, I think, a scripted, ham-haw type of thing, which is, to me is just nonsensical. With all due respect to Luis Elizondo, he says, well, Tucker, I really consider take very seriously my non-disclosure agreement. But the short answer to that is yes. Well, you just blew your NDA, non-disclosure agreement, out of the water. The correct answer would have been, I cannot confirm or deny that. But he doesn't say that. He just says, yes, he admits that the United States government, has debris from a crashed UFO. And this guy was part of ATIP, Advanced Aeronautical Threat Assessment, something like
identification
that.
Program. And Elizondo gets no slack on here. He gets no slack here at all, because one thing that he's never pressed on, because like you say correctly, it's all scripted. It's a program we're being fed via the people that we have learned over the years program us. And nobody presses Elizondo on the fact that he's still working as a contractor to the government. Well, for me, he's the government mouthpiece, he's the deep state mouthpiece, and he's the chosen one to roll this out. And I know as somebody who's been a lifelong kind of interest into UFOs and aliens, and my ideas have warped and morphed over the years as I've learned more. We can't allow our confirmation bias to take over here because they're telling us something we want to hear. In fact, we should be double on our toes. Red flags should be going up everywhere, Ellie, that the same people that have hidden this stuff, the same elite cabal, these Satanists, are now telling us it. There must be an agenda here, and I hope people see that.
Well, I mean, there is an agenda. I mean, America is there's a whole group of people led by Hillary Clinton and others of her ilk that want to completely remake America into something else than what it is. And people like me, I'm called a deplorable by Hillary Clinton in the last election. And she basically said half of Trump's supporters can be put in what we call a basket of deplorables. Isn't that lovely? So how many millions of people is that in America? It's millions. Tens of millions of people were deplorable. And so getting off track here a little bit, but when Rush Limbaugh talks about America is in a cold civil war, I blogged about this yesterday, A.Marzulli.wordpress.com. It's exactly where we are. We are in a cold civil war. We are basically at an impasse, and the vitriol is so vituperative, if I can use that word. It's just through the roof, absolutely through the roof, and you can't reconcile this anymore. You just can't. And
no, there's a schism.
Yeah,
there is a schism now. There's a schism now. There is a divide, and I'm with you. I mean, we are in some kind of cold first stages of a civil war, and all by design.
Well, I mean, the bottom line is Hillary Clinton was supposed to be elected, and that didn't happen. And because it didn't happen, uh, the deep state over here is in utter panic mode. And again, this is off the topic, but when you look at the FISA warrants and the whole stuff with Comey and Brennan, the FBI, the DOJ, I believe it goes all the way up to the Obama administration, and it's such a rat pack. And I think they're in panic mode, which is why we're trying to get rid of Trump and everything else, because they know they can't win the election because they have no platform. They have nothing to run on, nothing other than kill all the babies, keep open borders, and raise your taxes. How's that working out for you? But look, we've been talking about all this, and some of this that we see on a global level is fueled by the dark side. Now, there's not a demon under every rock. I get that. But there's an agenda here. There's a Luciferian agenda, which is, pushing ahead. And the Bible tells us this, that at the latter days, at the end of days, this figure will arise called the anti-Messiah, the Antichrist, the beast. And he will seat himself in the rebuilt temple in Jerusalem to be worshiped as God. So the Mayan elders, all these ancient sites being awakened, all this UFO activity, again, it all dovetails together, in my opinion.
And you've even got the temple, I believe, in the latest episode, and you show the size of the blocks that are used there. And again, this doesn't really fit with the technology of the time, and it makes sense that we're dealing with bigger entities, shall we say, Ellie?
Yeah, when I was down there, those 2 blocks of the largest stones in the Temple Mount, and that wall was built by Herod. It's a Herodian wall. I understand that. But what he did is he took these 2 large stones that I believe were, he found them. And because the Romans had advanced engineering skills, he was able to display them high up in the wall. Now they're underneath the street level. But in Roman times, when people were using it, remember, over the centuries, everything collapses and destroyed, and dirt comes in, and these stones, which originally were about 30 feet up, are now about 30 feet below the surface. So that's a couple of thousand years. That's what can happen. And I'm down there with our guide, and I'm arguing with him. I'm saying, no, the Romans didn't carve these, buddy. They may have moved them, but these blocks of stone came from somewhere else, and the Romans displayed them to show how great they were. I believe those stones underneath the Temple Mount were, in fact, Nephilim architecture, because the Nephilim were in the land. The Nephilim were all over that piece of real estate, well in advance of the Jews or the Israelites going in.
And Stonehenge, another Nephilim site then, Ellie? Yes, for sure.
I would say unequivocally yes. Of course, archaeologists will yell and scream and say no and all this other stuff. Look, the blue stones, the 18.5-year lunar cycle, the precise solstice measurements, lunar measurements. Was it used by existing cultures afterwards? Perhaps it was. But we see these sites like in America's Stonehenge. We see other sites in Portugal, Portuguese Stonehenge. We see other sites in Karnak. I mean, it's everywhere. And it's the same fingerprint, and then it all goes away. It just all goes away. They come over here, they build the mounds, they do all this stuff, and then they just kind of vanish, and no one really knows. You see, this is what amazes me about the archaeologists. They say, well, the people who built these mounds were called the Hopewell. And they use this, the Hopewell Indians, the Hopewell Indians. Well, Hopewell was a white farmer who found artifacts. And so they named the artifacts after the farmer. And this whole culture is named the Hopewell. Same thing with the Adena. It's a made-up name. In other words, the archaeologists and the anthropologists have no idea of who these people really were or what they actually called themselves. They don't know. They don't know. And I find that just alarming.
Yeah, I'm quite surprised. And even somebody in the chat room, I can't remember where I seen it, who it was, but it said It baffles them how more scientists aren't open to look at this sacred geometry, sacred geology, but of course, or sacred geography, sorry. But it's because it absolutely shatters their narrative, right?
It completely shatters their worldview and points to the validity of a supernatural worldview. And that's something that the modern science has abandoned long ago with the advent of Darwinism. You see, Darwinism is the springboard which sets up the Great Deception. Because if there is no God, then where do we come from? And this is why the neo-Darwinists are looking out there to space for the alien to come in, and they'll say, oh, you guys created us. You seeded us here. That's called panspermia. And the neo-Darwinists are really big into that. And that's what they're promulgating. So a scientist looks at this stuff and they can't go there. It's like they got blinders on. They cannot go there. Because the moment they open the door to the supernatural, now what? And see, that's why they look at people like me, and I'm a threat to them. And they don't know how to handle someone like myself or Steve Quayle, you know, or people, other people of our ilk. They don't. And they call it, they'll use, the way they handle us is they'll call us kooks, tinfoil hat people. They'll use disparaging names, pejorative. There's a guy, I won't mention his name, who writes hit pieces on everything that we do. And this guy's an atheist and doesn't believe in anything, and he just laughs at all this stuff. Well, at some point, you got to stop laughing, pal. I mean, you know, at some point, you got to realize if you're intellectually honest, but this guy isn't, but if you're intellectually honest, you got to agree, at least look at it and go, something's going on here. I might not know what it is, but only a fool, you know, is wise in his own eyes. And so these people are fools because they won't even address it. Just like our DNA evidence that we did, Kev.
Well, that's what I want to speak about that. Speak about the new stuff. We've got about 5 minutes before we go, Ellie.
Yeah, the DNA evidence, and the reason why I'm doing this is we were like, you know, blindsided in a way. Brian Forrester took the information and ran with it. He's the guy that's on the History Channel, and he makes it look like this is all his discovery. With all due respect to Brian, Brian had his hand in it for sure, but we raised the money, we found the labs, we did all the DNA testing, we did all the DNA extraction. Brian was nowhere to be seen in any of that. And this film that we're working on, that I'm working on, I'm in edit mode right now. I've got film from 2013 to the stuff that we did now. I've got new medical doctors, new information, all coming out, hopefully before the end of the year. We'll just see what happens. And we're trying to set the record straight. We're not bagging on anybody. I mean, Brian certainly had a hand in it. We're not saying he didn't. But, you know, what is this information? Who discovered the position of the foramen magnum? That wasn't Brian Forrester. That was Rick Woodward. And I guess what irks me is some of these people never give credit where credit is due. They just run like it's their own, and they're the experts. Well, they're the experts who are standing on other people's shoulders, like Rick Woodward, our anthropologist on our team, that contacted me and said, we've got morphological differences in the skull. No one had ever really stated that before Rick Woodward. I mean, not emphatically as he did, and certainly not calling attention to the foramen magnum. So the film might be a little high-minded in the sense that, yeah, we're talking about DNA, but we're not bogged down into the science of it. We're just showing that the haplogroups, the origin of these strange, enigmatic, so-called Paracas people, many of them originated in Europe or the Middle East. And that rewrites history. And we're pushing back on that because the ancient alien crowd is always saying, you know, ancient astronauts came and did this. We're saying that there's another paradigm, and that's the fallen angels came and mated with the human beings, creating a hybrid being known as the Nephilim. It's all in the biblical narrative. Yeah. And we're pushing back on that because we believe that's the true narrative.
And I used to watch a lot of Ancient Aliens, but I talk about confirmation bias a lot. And that is one show that is absolutely steeped in that, because you show them anything, well, it was aliens, because they're looking for aliens. They see aliens everywhere, Ellie. And I wish they would have a more kind of broad kind of speaker base, bring people like yourself on, bring other experts on as well, just to kind of give that other side of things for people to consider, you know?
Well, I was on the first 2 seasons of Ancient Aliens, and that's why we made the Watchers films, because what they would do is they would interview me, and then they would twist what I was saying. So I was on Jim Vieira's show a couple of years ago when he had that one season show in Search of the Lost Giants, and they had me on with my work on Catalina Island. That was my discovery. I was the guy that discovered the picture. I was the guy that had researchers take that picture.
Folks, I'll be back after the break. Remember to check out A.Marzulli.net. Check out On the Trail of the Nephilim, Episode 3. Ellie, thank you very much, sir.
Thanks, Dad. Really appreciate you having me on. Thank you, sir.
There we go, Ellie. We're still on YouTube, but thank you very much, Ellie. And I look forward to when Episode 4 comes out. We can do it all again. And let the people know
I'll definitely send it to you.
Yeah, let the people know one last time where they can get a hold of this brilliant documentary.
You can rent the first one on Vimeo, and that is L.A. Marzulli. Just go to Vimeo and punch my name in, L.A. Marzulli. And what the first one in the series is Mysterious Mound Builders. That's the first one. And you can check that out. The other two will be up there, not real soon, but, at some point. But thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely brilliant, Ellie. I'll let you get back to it, sir, and I wish you all the best. And keep me up to date with everything you're doing, okay?
You got it, Kev. Thanks for having me on. Take care.
No problem. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
There we go, folks. Now, I will be joined by Scotty Lopez in just a moment. We'll fire up his Skype right now. What an amazing episode that was. Or not even an episode. We're only halfway through. Now, for anyone out there, stay tuned because it doesn't end there. I've got Scotty with me. We'll get into the Nephilim. We'll get into the Giants. We'll get into some of the paranormal that Ellie was talking about as well. Not only that, but yesterday on the show, I was joined by quite a fascinating caller towards the end of the show. We had a couple of really good calls yesterday, and I have managed to line up the same caller to join us again today. So, Mikhail, I see him in the chat room. Not when we come back from this break, but the next break, we are going to get into what sounds like your, I hate to say fascinating, because it sounds terrifying story. Scotty Lopez, how you doing, sir?
I am doing absolutely fantastic. How's it going, Kev?
Oh, dude, A.Marzulli, Marzulli, his latest episode of On the Trail of the Nephilim. I was telling him before the show and during the show, for me personally, I think this is one of his best pieces of work yet. And I think maybe I'm a little biased, Scott, because it starts to bring the Nephilim of the old, their architecture, the mounds, stuff like that, and combines it with modern paranormal investigation using things like the ghost box, using the SLS camera.
That's cool. I've never thought about kind of merging those two fields together to try and so what they're like bringing ghost boxes and a lot of the equipment used in paranormal investigation, taking them out to these ancient sites and seeing what they get.
Yeah, when we come back from the break with TFR, I'll explain to you. I'll get in deeper with what they were doing. I was blown away, Scott. And you know how when I watch footage, as you do, we really scrutinize it. Not to the point that we're an ass. We're just looking to debunk things. And in fact, you know what? I'll tell you when we get on the air, because this will make for some good information. So, folks, we're about to go back to the mothership. I want you to give a big, huge round of social justice applause for Scotty Lopez in the room now. Yes. And who knows, Scott? Maybe Joe Joseph will show up at some point. You never know. You just never know with Joe. It's the way he sometimes rolls.
Yeah, he'll just come riding in on the wave on his ark, just kind of crashing into the shore.
How apt for today's show. But I want to thank everyone for hanging with us. Remember, check out L.A. Marzulli's site. And we're going to be continuing this paranormal woo when we come back to the network in just 2 short moments. We're nearly there, folks. I'm watching the time. Nearly there. This is exciting, Scott, right? The joys of live streaming. Here we go.
Yes.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Hour number 2 on today's Kev Baker Show. And we had L.A. Marzulli in the first part of the show. Wow. Always, always, always fascinating information. And Scott, what I like about L.A. is You know, he's one of these rare Christians that will talk about the UFO phenomenon, and he'll go and investigate some of the claims that have been made in the Bible itself. He'll go to some of the sites. And not only that, but he's determined to use science to help prove the case that he's making for these fallen ones, these Nephilim, and their global empire, it would seem, that they had at one point.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, I like LA's work. You know, we always bring up the Kandahar Giant, right? You know, whenever on Freaky Friday, always, you know, and that's something I first heard about from A.Marzulli. Yeah, it's just really cool the work he does, and like you said, he brings a very scientific approach to it, but he's, you know, investigating these you know, the stuff that is talked about in the Bible, you know, and he's looking at it kind of from a trying to kind of prove a lot of this, I guess you could say those supernatural kind of perspective of it. You know?
I'm hesitant to say paranormal anymore because the paranormal's becoming normal. But one of the things that really stood out for me in this documentary, and I'm not giving too much away here because myself and Ellie discussed this, but they're in one of these sites, and I believe it's Newark, the earthworks around there. And they've got the Newark Paranormal Society with them. Now, what they do is they have a piece of technology called the Ghost Box, the Ovulus. Costs about $1,000, so it's not something you can just run out and get right away. But it contains, I think Ellie said, 5,000 words within its lexicon. And what this technology claims to do is that if there's any energies around there, i.e. any spirits, they're able to manipulate the technology and literally form sentences or pick words out from those 5,000 that are within. So you see the Ovulus is switched on, and there's a 4-bar meter, Scott, and it shows the kind of the energies that are around in the area and the fact that something is trying to access the machines. So the word evil is on there. In LA, he's kind of taken aback, and he explained how he's not a big fan of these kind of things because it's basically high-tech Ouija boards. It's high-tech necromancy. And the next minute, you see the little machine and the thing's going, and the word witch comes onto it. So at that point, you hear, whoa. LA just kind of closes it down, and he says, wait a minute now, I think I know what's going on here. And he says a prayer, and he gets the girl to switch off the machine, switch it back on, all uncut footage, Scott. And when she switches it back on, puts it back to scan, the word holy comes up and the activity's gone down to 0.
Wow. That's pretty interesting.
It's the reaction of the paranormal researchers. And I said this to Ellie, that's what really got me, because this was something that the girl holding the machine, she was blown away. She could barely talk about it. And then later on, the guy that's part of the Newark Paranormal Society, he's talking about it as well, and he says, we've never had anything like that. And how many times have we heard, whether people are Christians or not, you know, the name of Jesus Christ, saying a prayer in these circumstances, Scott, it holds power that we just cannot comprehend.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, you know, we talk about words and spelling and how, you know, what's the root of the word spelling, you know, spell, right? You know, and, you know, maybe invoking some of these words really does have an effect, right? So if you invoke the name of Jesus Christ, maybe it really does have an effect on something going on. You know, maybe there's really something to, you know, invoking that word. It's very interesting.
And what is it? You know? I mean, the Bible says everything started with the word. And what is a word apart? Aside from spelling it out, it's also a vibration.
Yeah,
it's a frequency,
exactly.
Scott. Yeah, it's almost like
it's a frequency.
Yeah, and I think if you know the mastery of words, if you know some of this occulted knowledge, you know the frequencies assigned to certain words, and we talk about intentions as well, Scott. There's great power in just knowing what words to use in the right circumstances.
Think about people who are able to, quote unquote, charm someone with their words, right? how people become kind of entranced by the way certain people speak.
No, you don't mean my accent. He doesn't mean my accent here, folks. I don't want you all going kind of MK Ultra eyes at the Kev Scottish accent. We wouldn't want that.
Yeah. But really, though, I mean, people have found a way to sort of speak in certain ways. A good example would be like politicians, right? How they're able to have kind of that smooth talking and sort of sucker people in with the way they speak. In a way, it's almost like entrancing somebody. It's a form of magic, right? Kind of. So I don't know, man. It's very interesting. And another interesting thing you brought up, which I never even thought of, was these paranormal investigative tools. Looking at them from the perspective of them being like a Ouija board. But now that you mention it, yeah, right, because you're creating a conduit between our realm and whatever other realm we're trying to tap into. So it's acting as a gateway, as a portal, So.
And Scott, if you think about what happens in paranormal locations, they often report a sudden drop in temperatures in the room before something happens. And for me, that's almost a sign of these entities being able to manipulate, the heat energies that are around. And we talk about the electromagnetic nature of the universe. Well, it would stand to reason then, if that is the case, then these entities, we all go back to some kind of electromagnetic, energetic form. And it could very well be that these machines are accessible, can be manipulated by an electromagnetic energy source, i.e. demons, ghosts. I'm starting to weigh more on the side of any kind of paranormal activity, Scott. Any kind of ghostly stuff. I don't think it's Granny haunting the stairs. I don't think our loved ones are trapped here. I think it's more along the lines of Ooga Boogas, who may at times try to gain our trust by pretending they're grandma going up and down the stairs. But it makes sense to me that we are now seeing high-tech divination tools, i.e. the Ovulus, and one other thing that they used on the show. And we've looked at it before, big man. We've looked at it. It's the Xbox camera, the SLS camera, which basically, if you stand in front of it, it will map out your form. You find like a stick figure, and I'll try and bring some up on the screen in a moment to show people what I mean. But you get that idea, and you've probably seen it out there as well. When the Xbox first came out, it scans the room, and some people were finding that not only was it mapping them out in the room, and Johnny Whistles had this as well, but from time to time it would start flashing with another stick person in the room. And you couldn't see anything. Go on, you go, Scott.
Yeah, it was picking up subtle visual things that the human eye really can't pick up, but since it's a sensitive technological thing, right, it was picking up these other figures in the room, and people were like, well, what's going on here? And so people were like, wow, maybe we can actually use this thing to pick up paranormal activity. And it actually, from what I've seen, it seems like it's doing a pretty good job of it, so.
Well, in this.
Very interesting.
Yeah, on the documentary, you see somebody holding the SLS camera. It's one of the paranormal teams, Scott. And they're in a forested area. Now, one of the girls, again, stands beside a tree. And the thing beside her is absolutely massive. It's not just your ordinary size of figure that you see, i.e. human. And considering we're looking for Nephilim, we're on the trail of giants here, Scott, and they pick up something that was almost twice the height of this girl. And you see all of this in the documentary, folks. You see it all. Now, it's up to you what you make of that, but I've seen these cameras being used, and the way they do it, Scott, it would be very hard indeed to fake this up. Not that I would think for 1 minute LA would, but I know the debunkers out there, the skeptics will say, because you're seeing the actual shot of the girl by the tree, And in the same shot, you're seeing the person looking at the actual image being produced by the SLS camera. Now, to fake that, Scott, that's really hard work because
so you're essentially looking at the real time representation of it from a third person view, right? And that there's no way you can fake something like that.
No, again, I mean, I urge anyone to check this out. I found it utterly fascinating. I truly did. And LA has been over to the UK recently as well, Scott. And good conversation with LA before the show. And I'm really keen somehow to get him over here to Scotland because remember that site that I was at, Clavacairns, and we had the stone being thrown or knocked at night time? And you've seen the images, dude. You've seen the size of the stones, the standing stones that are there. Now, I know my ancestors were hardy big buggers, okay? But they weren't lumping around stones like that. And when, the National Heritage kind of Society or people, when they say that, yes, this is a Pictish burial ground, and then in brackets say no bodies have ever been excavated from the site, I really think we might just be looking at some narrative to go along with the mainstream timeline of history, when in reality, there's a massive mound there. It's just huge. And then around it are 12 other stones, which are either calendar months, or LA was talking about this lunar calendar that we find at a lot of these sites. I would love to take him there with his trained eye, and he'd be like, wow, this is like the jewel in the crown, you know?
That would be cool. I mean, there's so many sites over there in Scotland that I think you could take, and I mean, it's just crazy. It makes you wonder how many of these sites, are actually more than what we're being told. You know what I mean? And a lot of people just kind of go, okay, yeah, it's a burial site, right? And don't think twice about it. But then if you start to look deeper, it's like, wow, and that place that you went to, no way, that's not a burial site. No way that's a burial site. And
I'll tell you what, Scott, if it is,
it's lined up.
If it is, it's big people that are buried there. Definitely.
It's more like a calendar. It's aligned to astrological, events and all of that stuff. No, it's definitely not a burial site. If anything, if it had to do with like death or something in any way, I would say it would be more like a sacrificial site.
Yes.
Right, where you walk down that corridor, little corridor to the center, and then they do whatever sacrifice they're going to do, and then
that's exactly, Scott. You don't know this, but I said that, and I think I've got it in one of the clips. I'm stood in that bit at one point, and I'm saying I think it was at night time. And I'm saying this was a bad, bad place. That little corridor, that's ominous. And I think I even said, can you imagine walking down here back in the day when this was like in its glory? What were you walking down to? A pit within this mound. And for all intensive purposes, folks, when you look at the mounds that A.Marzulli has been covering, the Newark and the Serpent Mount, appreciate that that's now got grass growing over it. And then you go to the one in Clavacairns that's still all exposed. If you had grass over that, that would look very giant moundish.
Yes, it would. And people need to take into account that a lot of these sites are, really degraded, right, over the years. So if you were to really kind of think about what they would look like in their full glory, what they look like when they were just in pristine condition and just made, it would probably blow people's minds. And going back to that site, being a possible sacrificial site, maybe they led those people in, or, I'm assuming it was human sacrifice. Maybe it was animal sacrifice. Maybe it was both,
yeah.
But I'm assuming they did these sacrifices probably whenever the site was indicating something in the astrological calendar, right?
Boom.
So whenever the shadow from one of these stones is being cast right through the middle or something like that, you know what I mean? Or the sun is shining through the middle, you know, depending on however they had it set up, that's when they carry out the sacrifice. That's when they go in the middle and do that thing, you know. So that's what I'm thinking.
And Scott, think about this as well. I'm not the first to say this, but just this conversation as it's progressing. You know, you think of Scotsmen, and usually you think of ginger-haired people, right? There are a lot of ginger hair in Scotland. What's one of the attributes kind of given to the Nephilim? Well, they're red-haired giants. Again,
Yes.
it might mean absolutely nothing. It might mean everything. And this isn't the kind of only kind of giant lore that exists in the UK. It's steeped in it. We can come over here to the giant story. Antrim's Giant Causeway is a 60 million year old story of science. That's one take. Or is it? And you see the perfectly formed kind of hexagonal stones here, Scott?
Oh man, that thing blows my mind every time I see it, and I'm like, come on, a natural formation.
Pillars just coming up from the earth. What kind of, I don't know. Why isn't this more common? Why don't we see this in other places if
what if we're looking at, here we go, let me just throw it out there. What if we're looking at the petrified remains of giant bees, a giant beehive?
Scott, don't say that too loud. You know somebody on YouTube will do that by the end of the week, right? And after some of the YouTubes that I've been showing you today, Scotty boy, who honestly knows what goes on in the head of some people on YouTube land, right? But we'll get to that. And it says here, Antrim's Giant Causeway, 60 million year old story of silence, or is it? So CNN, prostitute, John D. Sutter is touring the island of Ireland clockwise. Eventually, he arrives at what he calls Northern Ireland's most popular attraction. Now, his depiction of the Giant's Causeway hints at the magical. A golf course green canyon wall slopes into the set of volcanic rock formations that are completely surreal. Near perfect hexagon tubes are stacked next to each other like puzzle pieces. Something this pretty couldn't be the result of a volcanic eruption 60 million years ago, could it? And my question is, do we see this all volcanic eruptions? I don't think so. Well, there are two lines of thought on that one. The first involves a certain giant by the name of Finn McCool, also known as Fionn Mac Cumhaill. And think a friend might enjoy... Oh, sorry, I was about to read the thing to share it there. It says, Finn is having trouble with someone across the water. The Scottish giant, Benandunner, is threatening Ireland, and an enraged Finn starts grabbing chunks of Antrim coast and throws them into the sea. Now, the rock forms a path for Finn to follow to teach Benandunner a lesson. Bad idea. You don't mess with the Scots. Benandunner is terrifyingly massive. Finn beats a hasty retreat, followed by the giant, only to be saved by our hero's quick-thinking wife, who disguised him as a baby. The angry Scot saw the baby and decided if the child was that big, the daddy must be real huge. So it goes on to say mythical landscapes, magical tales. And for Eleanor Killoff of the National Trust, the Finn story holds water. Of course it was Finn McCool. That's what we locals believe anyway. We give our visitors the two sides of the coin. The stories at the science and let them decide. And most visitors leave believing this place is an ancient home of a mighty giant. As Eleanor says, there's always two sides to a story, Scott.
Well, and how about that? You know, they present them both sides of the story, right? And most people will go, I think I'm going to go with the giant side. I think I'm going to go with the with the giant, the whole giant thing, you know. So that kind of says a lot in itself if you think about it.
And somebody else in the chat mentioned somewhere in Scotland here, Bennerty Hill. Now, I think this is somewhere that's known as the Sleeping Giant. I'm just going to see. Yeah, here it is. So it says Bennerty Hill, locally known simply as Bennerty, rises above the west of Ballingry in the west of Fife, oh whistles, and the summit ridge forms the boundary with Perth and Kinross. It's a prominent feature of the view from the M90 motorway. Yes, folks, we have motorways in Scotland. It's not that bad, see? And from Kinross to Lochleven. The lower slopes are steep on all sides, but the extensive heath around the summit is relatively flat. Now, from the north, you can walk over the hill via the Sleeping Giant Path, accessed from the RSPB Lochleven Visitors Centre. Now, this Sleeping Giant Path, we've got so many places to do with fairies. We've got so many places named after giants and things, Scott. It's not just, like I was using the terrible pun earlier on, it's not just tall tales. I mean, these things are pointing to things that were real in the past, right? And you liked that pun, didn't you? You liked that one, man.
That was good, Kev. That was good. Excellent. Yeah, I mean, look, there's got to be something to this, because there are way too many tales of giants, and not just in Scotland, but like all around the world. Pretty much every civilization has some kind of a tale of giants. And why is that? That it has to be rooted in something that really happened, or something that people really witnessed. It's just like the tales of dragons and giant lizards, or whatever, right? I mean, you see it all throughout the world. China has dragons, Europe has dragons, the South Americans, like the Aztecs and stuff, speak of dragons or serpent beings, but there's always this underlying thing, and it's the same with the giants. There's always these tales of giants.
Well, the serpents is interesting, Scott, and I'll get your take on this before we go to the break. But the Serpent Mound, again, over in your country, over in America, we had the Mayans, okay? They took the 13 crystal skulls to one of these mounds, and I believe it was the Serpent Mound, and it was to conduct a ritual to open all the ancient stargates and doorways. Now, why would a Mayan elder just randomly pick a site in the US to go and conduct that very ritual? I find that really, really interesting, intriguing, and quite ominous, dude. Not saying the Mayans were bad people, but they obviously know some of the power of these ancient sites where, to this day, there's energies that they can manipulate.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty wild. Actually, I didn't know that some Mayan elder took the crystal skulls to
I'm not
the
sure if it was
mountain.
2012 or the year 2000, but Ellie's got it all documented. There's images as well in the documentary, and yeah, that in itself, I mean, I was blown away, totally blown away.
But all of the crystal skulls haven't been found, though, right? There's one left that needs to be found, so I don't think it would work, right? You would have to have all of them.
That's the legend, isn't it? You need to have all 13 crystal skulls back together. And I know that there's a lot of people claim to have the crystal skulls out there, Scott, but how do you differentiate between the bona fide kind of crystal skulls and cheap imitations? Because I would imagine that over the years there's been many kind of frauds and replicas produced.
Yeah, I think though they have a pretty good photographic record of the legit crystal skulls that have been found.
That's another rabbit hole we could go down for a full show, isn't it?
Yeah, I was just about to say, speaking of the crystal skulls, I mean, that's a whole thing all in itself. And, that goes into, do the crystal skulls hold information? Because we talk about, crystal being a medium for data storage, right? Are they essentially hard drives? And maybe you need all of them together to decode all of the data, right? Think of it as, for anybody out there who's kind of a computer geek, think about hard drives in a RAID configuration. You know what I'm talking about, Kev?
Yep.
You would have to have all of them in order to extract all of the data, right? Because if you're missing one hard drive, then you're not going to know what is contained. So yeah, the whole crystal skull thing, that's just crazy.
Oh, here it is. Look, here it is. And this was
yeah.
November the 11th, 2011. Some good woo numbers there. The Mayan elders, the 13 skulls. They must have them, Scott. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Yeah. And of course, that could just be a picture, but it says here, yeah, on 11/11/11, another group of 13 elders will arrive in LA from Maryland to come together. We'll be back on the other side. We'll briefly touch on this, and then we'll open up the phone for last night's caller, Mikhail, to really take this show to the next level. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere, folks. Yes, Scotty,
Marty in the chat has never heard of the crystal skulls.
Oh, right. I'll bring because we're gonna bring Mikhail on at some point. If we don't get a chance to go over this fully in this next first 5 minutes or so, Marty, because I love you so dearly and you do so much to help support the channel here, I will spend some time on tomorrow's Safe Space and we'll take a look at the crystal skulls. That's always good information. And I don't know, Scott, I find it quite exciting when you find people that haven't seen something before and you can introduce them to the topic. Not tell them what to think about it, but just lead them to the trough. And whether they feed or not, that's then up to them, right?
Yeah, it's awesome to see people out there who just, they haven't come across the information or they haven't come across the woo because of it. We're old hats at this. We've seen it all almost.
Not white hats. We're old hats.
Yeah, so I mean, I've known about the crystal skull since I was a little kid, and that goes back to the old, so like Arthur C. Clarke Mysterious Universe.
Yeah, that's the first time I'd ever heard of the crystal skulls, dude. Ever.
That's where I first heard of, and so it was like way back in the day, man, and ever since then, I'm like, whoa, it just.
I'm like
wow.
you though, Scott. I mean, the properties within crystal. I mean, we haven't even talked about the fact that they're cut from the one piece of crystal, how you would do that in ancient kind of times. But
dude, everything about them is so crazy, right?
I've got this image of them all being linked up and then some light being shone through them and like a holographic representation of the Library of Alexandria, for lack of a better term, just been there. So you can, like, Minority Report, just access it all with haptics, dude. Know what I mean?
Yes, please. I'll take them.
Yeah. I'll have one of them for $10. Please. Yep. But no, Scott, it's been great you can join me here today because last night towards the end of the show, we kind of tried to go Art Bell coast to coasty. We opened up the phones. And the first caller, it might not have been on the subject I was expecting to talk about. It turns out this guy's grandfather's brother, by the sounds of it, was down working as part of Operation High Jump, or in and around the first time that the Americans had bases down at the South Pole. And yeah, the stuff he was tying it together with, he was a bit nervous. I think he was 73 as well, he was telling us. But and then, with 2 minutes left, and I seen a UK number popping up, and I thought, well, I'll at least thank them for calling in. It turns out somebody I've got on YouTube, get this, he's offered me music in the past. You'll be pleased to hear that, Scott. But we got the beginnings of a story that really ties in with a lot of the stuff we've been talking about lately, i.e. shadow dudes. So, and I was sharing with you, I shared with the audience, my brother's kind of ongoing episode with the shadow dude, shadow entities.
What is it with me and you? We both got brothers that are dealing with shadow dude, man.
I know.
Shadow dudes.
I know. And why is it the minute I start and we start going back into the old stuff, the good stuff from Freaky Friday onto the streams, the paranormal stuff that we all enjoy doing, why is it I'm noticing an uptick in this stuff around me since we've started doing this? That freaks me right out. But hey, we'll get into this as well. And Mikhail, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. I'll be calling you in just a moment, sir. Don't you worry. Well, I won't be calling you. I'll be opening up the phone for you, and I'll be watching for your number coming in, okay? So here we go. We're going back to And he's on the line already. But okay, we are back. We are live. Final segment of today's show, and I'm quite excited about this. We're going to be opening up the phone in 5 minutes, Mikhail, for you to phone in and give us a story that we almost got last night. I'm almost tempted, Scott, to put the kind of lightning and rain kind of sound effects in the background, because this is going to be a good one. It's going to be disturbing. And we were saying during the break there, you know, we made a conscious decision. Myself and Scott spoke about this a few weeks ago, that we needed to get back to basics. We needed to get back to the paranormal, the woo, stuff like that when we do Freaky Friday. And that's kind of rolled into the daytime streams, the weekend streams, and we're on that kind of vein of thought right now. And as we've been kind of pursuing this angle of investigation and getting back into the good stuff, you know, it seems that myself and Scott in particular, we do have our own connections to these shadow dudes. And it seems to be getting worse now that we're talking about this again, Scott.
Yeah, my brother has had a couple of incidents, you know, it's, you know, sporadic, right? It doesn't happen like all the time, but, you know, he sees these shadow figures. My mom had an interesting experience. It wasn't really a shadow. It was more of a full-on apparition kind of situation with my mom.
Now we're gonna lose your camera for a second, Scott, because I'm gonna add in the network, and obviously I don't want the number coming up on the live stream here. Okay, so I'll move this out of the way. Yeah. On you go, man.
Yeah, so I mean, there's obviously been, you know, it just seems like there's been this uptick in things, and another interesting thing I need to mention about what's going on around my my house is that not only is it shadow people, but my brother has seen what appears to be shadow animals.
Oh dear.
And my mom has seen it too.
Shadow animals.
Yeah.
Tell us more, dude. Tell us more. I mean, what's that all about? I mean, this is new on me.
Yeah, so like my brother said he was sitting there and he thought that our cat had walked by him. But the cat was on the other side of the room laying down. And our other cat was actually in the other room with the door shut. So there was no other, you know, and the dog was in the living room laying down. And he said it was pretty big too, like almost the size of our dog. And then my mom has seen something like that. She thought it was one of the animals that had walked by, but it wasn't. So I don't know, that kind of, you know, I don't know what to make of this. I really don't.
That really is. That's a bit ominous, Scott. It's almost like there's a portal or something where you are. Now then, we are going to go to the phones. And this is something I'm really enjoying after last night. The caller we had and the caller that we're about to get right now. Because just towards the end of yesterday's Kev Baker show, we had 1 minute left, and we basically got the introduction from the next caller that's coming on here. We heard a little bit about his background, about his story, and I just had to hear more. And my Discord server lit up as well. These people were wanting to hear more. The chat rooms, they're wanting more of this kind of stuff going on. So let me go to my friend Mikhail down in Wigan in the UK.
Oh yeah.
How you doing, man?
Yeah,
and
okay, mate.
yeah,
I'm all right. I'm not bad.
This is brilliant. And thanks for coming on at short notice, and you don't have to rush tonight.
No worries.
We've got plenty of time.
No worries.
So talk to us, man. Yeah, what's happening?
Man, it's been going on since I was I'd say about 3 or 4, something like that. That's when I first started having, you know, encounters and stuff like that. The first thing whatever happened to me, it's weird you was on about portals, you know, earlier on in the show, like, because that's what started it all, really, when I first noticed. I remember I was with my nan, in my house, like, 'cause I'm from like a strong Catholic family, so you wouldn't expect things like this happening to me, like, and I seen something literally disappear, into midair, like dematerialize, and from that point on, like, things just got weirder. I remember being outside a bedroom while my nan was ironing, and it was just like this intense frequency change, and then being crushed to the floor, crushed into a ball on the floor, and it just went from there, really. Started seeing things coming more. But the main thing what happened to me was when I was about 12 or 13, something like that, and it was the people what come into my life, and it accentuated things more. It was a man I met like that through just a family friend, and I don't know, click with him, I suppose, but it got me into. It's like a 12, 13-year-old lad. You wouldn't expect, somebody handing them magic theory in practice and dictionaries of demons and stuff like that. And it just snowballed from there. I started seeing things, more stuff started coming, shadow people wise. And the pinnacle of it all was, I remember being in a bedroom in the house, like, type of thing, directly above where I seen the thing dematerialize. So, you know what I mean, the correlation there between, is it a portal, in that area of the house, or something activated, is there something in me what's been activated? And I think Scotty was just on about it then. It doesn't have to be a shadow person. It was an entity, and it was like a woman on a, you'd see a plaster statue. Yeah, it was like a woman on a cross with her arms extended, just staring at me. Oof. And from then I just went crazy. My life just got weirder and weirder. Started having seizures, started having what people had termed as sleep paralysis and fits like that, but it wasn't that, because I was getting it when I was fully conscious and awake. So, it's just come from there, really. It's just gone away in my life. Like, I'm 38 now, and I'm still seeing stuff. I mean, I said to you last night on the phone about the entity stood over my bed, which was, I'd say, like an outline. When you see Jesus on the Mount of Olives praying, looking over that classic image, it was that, but it was like black curved granite, and it was just hovering over my bed type of things to the side of me. I've seen loads. I've had loads of weird experiences. I mean, I wouldn't know where to begin. I should have wrote notes, really.
Oh, Mikhail, this is wow. Now, is anyone else in the household, have they been experiencing anything, or is this really targeted?
My mum. My mum and that. My mum's like, I live with my mum and my son, because I have custody of my son, and I moved back to my mum's. My mum's the strongest Catholic you've ever met in your life. She's like completely. She's had one really weird experience. What was like 1980 when she was carrying me, believe it or not, and her and my dad had a joint UFO, sighting, and that's the only thing. But she won't talk about it. Like, it contaminates her face a bit, but no, it's just me. Thank God, really, because it's not passed on to my son, But I'm glad it's contained within my life and not somebody else's. But like I said, shadow people thing, God, it's countless. It's countless. I mean, sometimes it sends me into like a seizure, I've been to like neurologists and stuff like that to see what it is. Could they describe it as, like sleep paralysis or whatever, sleep epilepsy? But nobody's really got a clue, you know what's happening.
This is very similar to the same things that my brother experiences. So this is very interesting, actually. Yeah.
So when you were younger, Mikhail, if it's okay to ask you, I mean, this gentleman that came into your life, I mean, was he leading you obviously down the dark path?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Well, the guy was. It's like it's just what would appear on the surface as just a normal bloke who everybody knows, like a dead approachable, nice guy. Like, I suppose he still is. I'm not really calling him, because he has opened my eyes to a lot of stuff. But on the other side of the spectrum, he's like, he's opened me to a lot of negative. I don't know if you call them entities or negative energy or whatever like that. Yeah, it was really, really normal on the surface, but as you got to know him, it's like
dabbling in stuff that he probably shouldn't have been dabbling with.
Well, would you give it a thingy? This is what I mean. Would you give Magic Theory and Practice to a 12, 13-year-old along with a Dictionary of Demons? You know what I mean? It's like
it's literally.
If you've seen the guy, it's like he's 80 nearly, but he looks mid-40s. You've never seen anything like it. It's like he's doing some kind of youth spell. Like, it's crazy, but it kind of makes you think woman's treasure wasn't gold and it wasn't jewels. It was knowledge. So you're an open door, and you can't close a portal. Like I'm still a Christian. I've always been a Christian all my life, even without trying. But it's like I've never done Ouija boards. I've never done anything like that. I've never invited anything knowingly. But maybe my barriers were down, and maybe I was a bit lost in myself, you know, and things have latched on. Do you get what I mean?
Oh, I get what you mean. And Mikhail, unbeknown to you, and I want to explain to people out there now, TFR, you're going to be totally unaffected by this, I hope. But the simulcast has started doing something I've never seen it doing before. And Scott's been here a lot of the simulcasts we've done, a lot of the live streams. I've been getting a message coming up saying that the stream is trying to reconnect. Now, so far, we're good, but I can't definitively say that there's anything interfering with this broadcast, Scott. But that's the weirdest thing I've ever had happen. And when you put it into context of what we're talking about, and I could see you looking at it as well, Scott.
Yeah, I was looking at it down at the bottom, and I was like, what's going on here?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And Mikhail, does this often happen around you, though? Do you find that, like, sometimes electrical equipment, stuff like that, does that start, like, working?
I'm a drummer, right? So it's like, thank God I don't have to deal with any, you know, electrical devices. But yeah, it does, yeah. Yeah, I get that a lot, you know, with other people, because I'm near people who's, you know, using a lot of electrical equipment. Yeah, weird stuff does happen. I get a lot of, you know, weird frequencies, let's put it that way.
Well, this is a bit weird, I must admit. Now, people were asking, and you've answered that, actually. They were asking if you've tried praying when any of these things have occurred. Now, you said there you've been a Christian all your life. Do you try praying?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, well, a weird thing is, I've always had, since being like a small child, like I say, when I went going back again, I'm all muddled up like with it, you know, my story like type thing. I should have wrote it down first for you. Going back to when I was like 3 or 4, I always remember I had an instance where the front bedroom in the house, which we live in again now, like, which is ironically my room again, always had, I won't say a weird atmosphere to it or whatever like that, but you know, when you're a kid, you get like urges, you know, to go and do stuff. And I used to always come into this room where there was a picture, you know, the sacred art on the wall. The sacred art, you got a famous picture of Jesus, like, you know, with his heart exposed type thing. I've still got it now, ironically enough. I'm looking at it as I'm speaking to you. It's on my wall still. But yeah, I've tried. I've always had, you know, that. I've always felt God near me. I've always felt the presence of God, and I've always cried out to God. I've tried that. And yeah, it has, I'd say, 85% of the time worked. Maybe people might say I've not, you know, cried out hard enough or whatever like that, but yeah, it's hard to think. It's very hard to think on your feet, you know, when you're in that situation. Do you get what I mean?
Oh, I would like to say I can imagine, but I can't imagine. And, you know, this portal...
Yeah, you feel like you're going to die.
Wow, dude. And this guy that you were in touch with, I mean, do you still stay in touch with him? Do you mention to him what's happened in the meantime to you? Anything like that?
No.
No?
No. I say all right to him and that. I say hiya to him and that when I see him. But there's always been, since the separation at, say, I don't know, 13, late 13, nearly 14, something like that, there's always been distance between us. I've tried to approach him on numerous occasions, you know, and just have, like, you know, a chat even, you know, and just maybe lead into that subject. Or, because he's really into, like, ufology. Try to talk to him on that, but there's always a distance, you know, there's always a barrier. Maybe I've served my purpose, you know. I mean, the next stage, what he wanted was, he got me into sigils, you know, sigil magic.
Yep.
And that was like the the parting shot type of thing. He got me into that, taught me how to do that.
And what did he claim to be? I mean, was he like a Crowley disciple? I mean, what did he explain?
Yeah, he's in it. Well, first of all, it was the reason I got friendly with him was martial arts. So I got into that, and he was into all different like disciplines, different stuff like that, and training. Because I've always been like quite a, like a big lad type thing, quite a big guy. So it was like going to the gym, stuff like that. You get to know him, then you know more about him, and then it was magic comes up. Magic, and believe it or not, magic and Third Reich, that was his, his expert subjects, like, what he'd go on about. And just went from there. Then you go to his house, and it's just like, the guy's an artist. So it was just paintings of Crowley everywhere.
Oh wow! And we're even having
it's crazy.
We're even having chatter. Well, we're even having chatters now telling us that they're having problems with their laptops and things. Oh, dude, Mikhail, I honestly wish I knew what to say to you. I mean, is this to this day? Is this still happening to you?
Yeah. I'm still getting things pursuing me, things coming in, different things, that weird synchronicities. Yeah, all the time, nearly every night. I mean, like the worst night I've had was, I don't know about how many. I think it peaked really, really bad, and it got to a point where it was like, a proper cry out to Jesus moment I'd say about 6 years ago, and I was on the verge of a breakdown through it. I was really bad. Like I was having 14, 15 seizures a night, where these things were coming. I'd hear a frequency change in my ears, and I'd see things like a ball of light getting bigger and bigger and bigger in the room, and like just growing and growing and growing. And then
the frequency
I'd be
change.
paralyzed.
Sorry, I was going to say, the frequency change in your ears, is it like a ringing in your ears, and it would like happen?
Yeah,
that's
it, exactly. It getting closer, like something locking onto you. Getting closer and closer and closer. Then the feeling comes over you like you've been buried alive. When you see these Victorian Edwardian graves and you see scratch marks on the side because people have been buried like that. Well, that's what it feels like. It feels like you've been basically like, buried alive. You're completely locked in your body, and it's like something's over to you. But people describe this as happening to people during sleep. This is happening to me personally during consciousness, during being awake.
Yeah, you're absolutely aware of this. And Scott, you know what worries me about this, dude? You'd go to the doctor with something like this, and they're going to hit you with...
Oh, yeah, they say you're mental.
Yeah, they're going to hit you with a pile of drugs. And I think me and Scott, we share the opinion that, they have a counter kind of productive effect, because it seems they open up more portals for these things to get in as well, Scott. They make you more susceptible.
Yeah, well, the drug thing as well. Going into that, I went off the rails when I was about 14, really bad through, different things happening to me. And I went, you become a bit, like I was always big for my age, and I always looked a lot older than I was. So I went a bit, left down the left-hand path, like I went a bit left field of things. And yeah, it was like, I've heard David Icke say in the past that, some drugs dull your consciousness, and other drugs, make you more like opened up, susceptible, like type of thing. But
yeah,
it was like, I'd go out, and now this is a weird thing, like I'd go out, like a 14-year-old lad, I'd go out on a night out or something like that, or I'd go with my friends, everybody go home at like 11 o'clock at night. I don't know why I did it, but like I'd maybe smoke some or whatever, you know what I mean, whatever young lads do. I'd go out all night on my own, just in fields. I have no idea what went on. I have no idea what happened to me. I come home at 6 o'clock in the morning. Like, I have no idea what went on. It's just like summer, took over.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's just crazy stuff like that.
So these things, do these things take you over? I mean, would you say you've been possessed by them at some point, or are they more external? Or are they in the room with you?
More in the room with me, I'd say. I wouldn't say possessed, as in such possessed. But I've done things. I've done really, really weird things when I've been really low, type of thing. And I've been, you know, quite vulnerable to it. I've done things completely out of character. So is that not an influence? You know what I mean? They say there's oppressors, don't they? The oppressive, you know, demons and whatever.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
You see, that you're the perfect example. Like you really are. I talk about the paranormal being normal because it's becoming so common. You've been living with this. This has been a normality for you for years, man. I mean, I don't want you to give away your age, right? Yeah, but I mean, roughly how old are you now?
38, yeah.
How old are you now?
38. So
38.
38. So 34 years.
Wow.
I've been dealing with it. But like I said, peaked at, I'd say somebody sent me down the wrong path at, you know, 12, 13, that way on. And it really it went from watching things vanishing, dematerialising, because like I said about, you know, when I was downstairs with me nan when I was 3 or 4 and I seen that thing vanish into thin air. Went from things like that and bedroom doors locking behind you and getting stuck in them, like things coming towards you type thing, you know, glancing past you. It went from that to just complete, like, just pure hell, like.
I'm sitting here looking at Scott. Scott's looking at me, and the pair of us are flabbergasted. Scott, this is, I mean, we talk about paranormal activity, man. We talk about the experiences of your brother, my brother, and here we have Mikhail, who's lived this like 30 years, dude, over 30 years.
Yeah, yeah.
This is wild, man, and you know, just the similarities between Mikhail's experiences and my brother's experiences is just, I mean, it's uncanny, you know. I mean, you know, my brother has.
Is he a very sensitive person?
I've never experienced any of this, you know.
Is your brother quite sensitive to this kind of thing, Scott?
Yeah, and you know, and this is the brother I talk about who's very skeptical about everything. He's very logical and analytical, and he doesn't really ascribe to this stuff. But these are things happening to him that he cannot deny. You know what I mean? And he doesn't know. He doesn't know what to make of it, you know, and I'm sure at some point, you know, I mean, he's told my mom, he's like, am I going crazy? Is something wrong with me?
Definitely
you know,
not going crazy.
And I'm like, no, man, because you're not the only one who's been having these experiences, dude. And
this is what happened with my brother as well, Scott. He kind of broke down the other night when we were covering the shadow dude again, because he hadn't realized I'd had a little kind of corner of the eye shadow dude. Nothing like what Mikhail or your brother's been experiencing, but he thought people would think he's going mad. He had one where it walked into the room behind him and he thought it was his flatmate. Another time it was just stood in the corner of the room, like as in shadow dude, physical form. And did you see the weekend?
Oh, yeah.
So you get these shadow entities you have, they're very, very solid looking. They're not the kind of corner of the eye thing like I've had.
Do you know how I'd describe it? Well, you know, when you go in it sounds so stupid.
Not on this show, it won't. Mikhail, never worry about sounding stupid on my show. I take care of that for everyone.
You know, when you see a toilet door and you see the black shadow like a gent, and you see the man on it.
Yeah.
The outline of a man. It's like that. It's just jet black, solid figure.
That's like Carmel, Maine. That's like the one we've been watching at the weekend, Scott.
That shadow dude. Man.
So what if, right? And again, we're gonna have to let you go in a minute, Mikhail. But and thank you so much for sharing this. But what if the times that we're living in, they're now able to manifest themselves even more physically, Scott? They're becoming more solid. They're taking more form.
Yeah, definitely. There's so much changed. Yeah, of course it has.
So you've noticed a change then, Mikhail, since like the ones you've seen as a child compared to what you're seeing now? They're becoming more, dare I say it, real? Not that they weren't real in the first place, but they're gaining more of a physical foothold in this reality, if I can term it that way.
Well, something's cracked, hasn't it? Something between. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like the thing with time slips and stuff like that. You know, there's something's definitely altered, hasn't it? As time's gone on, I've noticed that.
But we're out of time, brother. We're out of time. And Mikhail, Scott, he'd probably definitely love you to send us some music through. Scotty, one quick word for Mikhail before we go, man.
No, just amazing. An amazing, you know, just firsthand experience of this stuff. And
I'll be back tomorrow, folks, with director John Sumple to talk about the extraordinary, the seeding, alien hybrid programs, contactees, and a lot more. Don't go anywhere, folks. Wherever you are, make it TFR and Denny touch that dial. Okay, Mikhail. Oh, hang on. I'll bring Scott back. I hung up on Scott by mistake. I've only got about 1 minute to say goodbye to you, Mikhail. So,
no worries, mate. Yeah, thanks for thinking. I was a bit nervous about it come through in my voice. You know,
oh, brother, never. And you've got so much support in the chat room there, man. I thank you for phoning in.
I'll watch it back.
Yeah, I just wish that it was a better topic and you weren't living through this, dude. So you take care and send me
no worries, mate.
Send me a taste of your music on Facebook or somewhere, dude. And
I will, mate. Yeah. I'll send you a link.
Do that, and myself and Scott will play it on the next stream at the weekend. Thank you so much, man.
Oh, thanks, mate. Okay, I'll see you both later. Man. Thanks a lot.
Catch you later, man.
All right, take care, man.
Oh, Scotty.
Woo. Wow. Well.
Okay, we've had 2 calls in 2 nights, and I'm thinking, wow, this is the way to go, Scott, because that story there, the real stories that people have to share, they're like 100 times better than anything we're going to find on YouTube.
This is just wild, man. And like I said, that just the parallels between his experiences and the stuff my brother have experienced is just it's uncanny, man. You know, my brother probably isn't experiencing it to the extent that Mikhail is, you know, like with seizures and stuff like that, but he's experienced the sleep paralysis stuff many times, and just these shadow manifestation things are just constant with him. And you know, we were discussing, you know, maybe things that could cause people to become opened up more to these things. And in Mikhail's case, right, you know, he talks about somebody led him down a path of you know,
bad juju.
You know, getting him dabbling into stuff that he probably should not have been dabbling in, right?
But like you said, I mean, who does that, Scott? How irresponsible is that? I mean, it's one thing dabbling in magic and things, but then to introduce like a 12, 13-year-old kid to this stuff, literally giving a matches to children, you know?
Yeah, there's something really nefarious about that. I would have to say, you know, that dude had some weird, some pretty nefarious intentions, I think, to do that.
Well, my brother has spoken. His laptop started freaking out when we were doing the show, and he says, "Awesome, you need to keep the calls coming really good." So when the kid brother tells you that the calls are a good addition to the show, I think it's probably time to pay attention, right?
Yeah. Now, like in my brother's case, he was never open to this as a child, but when he was a teenager, you know, in high school, he got the meningitis shot. You know, this is before my mom and you know, we all were awoke to the whole vaccine situation, right? He got the meningitis shot, and then he ended up getting meningitis from it. And you know, meningitis causes your brain to swell. It's a bad deal, you know. And he was damaged from it. He literally, you know, he was damaged from the vaccine. After that, his personality kind of changed. You know what I mean? He just wasn't the same after that. And I would say it wasn't too long after all of that, he started having these experiences, shadow people, all of this stuff. And, you know, you'll have your medical people.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Say, well, you know, maybe it just has to do with, you know, some form of a neurological damage from the vaccine or whatever. And I don't think so. I think the trauma or something that happened to his brain may have opened him up to this. And I draw parallels between that and like people that sustained trauma to the head, and then they end up unlocking something and like saying becoming a genius, right? We talked about that one guy that got in a fight, in front of a bar, right? And he got knocked out, and then next thing you know, he becomes this mathematical genius when he was just
couldn't
a
add
normal
two and
dude.
two. He couldn't add 2 and 2, and then he ends up like John Nash.
So I think in some of these cases, what if it unlocks an area of the brain that opens you up to, paranormal activity, to the other side, that you're able to tap into that. Some people may be born with it. Some people may have some kind of a trauma or something, happen to them that unlocks that ability. With Mikhail, it sounds like he's always kind of had that ability, right? Because he says he remembers having weird experiences all the way back when he was like 3 or 4 years old, and then having somebody teach him, that kind of stuff, just compounded all of that, right? Teaching him sigils and Crowley, it's just, that just wasn't a good combination for him to already be opened up to that kind of stuff, and then to start dabbling in that kind of stuff. So
that child's mind, when we're younger, before the programming rewires parts and almost tunes us out of some of the stuff that's all around us, when it's so innocent, when it's forming, when it's looking to create those neural pathways, when it's just at that brilliant stage where everything's taking shape, we must still be able to access either the third eye, a part of the brain.
I think so.
Eventually, over time, Scott, whether it's calcification, whether it's something else, whether it's, like you said, the things that we give our kids when they're born and stuff, something seems to dull that down by the time you get to a teenager, usually, when you hear of these things, it starts to wear off. However, then you've got somebody like your man there, Mikhail, and I wonder if Mikhail stood out to this guy, the one who gave him the stuff. I wonder if he stood out for a reason, i.e., he was already quite open to the spiritual. He was already like one of these antennas, Scott.
I think so. That's what I'm starting to kind of think. I think maybe this dude saw something in him and wanted him to get into it, because he thought that Mikhail would probably be a very, very good conduit to get in contact with entities beyond the veil. You know what I mean? So maybe he was just trying to, how do you say, groom an apprentice, almost, or something like that. You know
use him as some kind of almost like an antenna, like some kind of energy booster. I know that sounds strange, but there was something that guy recognized, Scott. I think, anyway.
I think so. And if that guy was already dabbling into that kind of stuff, then he's open to it too, right?
Yep. He might have recognized something in Mikhail that he knew from himself.
Yeah, I mean, and he could probably sense it just by being around him or whatever. He's
can you imagine living that though, Scott? Like that's like every night. That's normal life for Mikhail. We come in here, we dabble in it, we dip our toe in the subjects, we get a laugh and a joke, and sometimes I feel so bad that we do almost crack a joke about some of this stuff, because then there's people out there who, for them, it's not a laugh or a joking matter. This is their common day. This is a common place for them.
Yeah, it's wild, man. And I'm like you. I don't really experience this stuff.
Well, it's not.
I can only like maybe count one or two times that I can say I've had some kind of a like weird paranormal experience of some kind. Yeah, probably
think
two
about
times.
it. Me and you would love to, probably, right? When we talk about it all the time, we're into this stuff, right? And if anyone's going to experience something, you'd expect it to be people like us, because we're kind of looking for it. We're looking for that confirmation, but no, it doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't. But it's people close to us, and then we're like, well, what the hell, And I live in the same house as my brother. He's experiencing this stuff, and I'm really not. But I've had people come over. My friend, his girlfriend was very, very open to this kind of stuff, right? I would say his girlfriend is kind of like Ange.
Oh, Ange is an open
Joe's
book.
wife, Ange.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was his girlfriend at the time. When they came over to, visit, she said, there's a girl here. And we were like, what? And she's like, there's a girl here. And she's like, I saw her by the tree in your front yard. And we're like, whoa. And she said, yeah, she's wearing like clothing from the 1800s, like from around the time of the Civil War. And so I was like, And then I haven't really thought about that since then. You know what I mean? But then this full body apparition experience my mom had fairly recently. She said that she saw somebody in the kitchen and she thought it was my sister.
Ah.
You see? And she thought it was my sister bending down to get something out of the fridge by the island. There's like, we have like a little island thing in the middle of the kitchen.
Yeah, you've got one of these big, huge, lovely American kitchens, man. I'd give them a right testicle to have a kitchen like that. Do you know when I'm in my kitchen, Scott, I can touch both walls when I put my hands like that. It's just like a slither. Yeah. But anyway, I'm detracting from your story. Sorry, man.
But my mom was sitting in the living room, on the recliner, and she's watching TV, and she thought my sister went in there and was getting something out of the fridge, and she was like, hey, what are you doing? You're supposed to be in bed because it was a school night, and no reply. When she looked back up, it was gone. And she didn't say anything about it at the time, but next morning she was like, it's like, I saw something last night. She's like, she's like, it's been bugging me. It's been freaking me out. And I was like, well, what'd you see? And then that's when she told me. She said, I thought it was Tori in the kitchen getting something out of the fridge. She bent down and, it was like bent down and everything. And I was like, was it like a shadow person? She's like, no, wasn't shadow. It was more
real,
like real. And she said it was about the size of my sister, and she thought it was a girl. And so immediately my brain pulled up my friend's girlfriend saying that, years ago, that there's a girl on the property. And I was like,
Oh, you're giving me the heebie-jeebies, man. You truly are. One last thing before we go, though, I almost forgot. My mum messaged me there. What about the fact that the guy in Mikhail's life is like nearly 80 years old and just happens to look like myself at 40? I mean, that sounds like somebody that's got a high mastery of magic, dude.
I think so. I think Mikhail was kind of spot on at hinting at, this guy could be engaged in some form of vampirism of some kind, or at least channeling energy and keeping himself in a youthful state. You can't rule out the fact that maybe this guy's just in really good shape. He was into martial arts and, he just took care of himself really good.
And martial arts, it's a lot more than just, a kind of a form of fighting. It's a way of life, and it really can. It can, I see people, black belts and things, lifers, Scott, and they're so healthy. It's a way of life, isn't it?
Yeah. So, you can't discount that, but I think I really do. I think there's something a little more into that too. I think this dude is trying to channel some stuff to keep himself youthful.
I don't often pray. I do pray, but I tell you what, I'll be throwing one up tonight for everyone out there that's listened to this, and in particular, Mikhail, and anyone that's been plagued by these things. When I'm going to be opening up the phones a lot more now, And if it will help you to come and share that with us, then I'm here for that. Scott's here for that. You see the way we roll. We respect everyone. We wouldn't make fun of you in any way. That said, you know, our guts are good detectors. If you try and pull the wool over our eyes, myself and Scott will catch on pretty quickly. But, you know, I think it adds to the radio. I used to like that on Coast to Coast as well. I like it on Clyde Lewis. I like when he opens up the phones. So I'm going to try and make this, Scott, and you have to remind me, we have to try and make this kind of a regular feature thing, whether it's just one day a week or something, we go to calls, because... Yeah, the more and more... We've got our own personal stories. Think of all the listeners, what they could add to the table, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, I think on some of them times on Freaky Friday, when we start to kind of run low on you know, on
last
articles
hour.
and stuff.
Yeah, the last hour is usually
last hour we're trying to kind of dig stuff up, you know, and we do it on the fly anyways, but you know, it gets kind of rough in the last hour. I think that would make for a good time to, you know, open up the phone to anybody who wants to talk about any of their experiences with
Scott,
the woo.
We can add to the call because Mikhail is in our chat room. He says, I never mentioned on the phone one time an entity pulled me away from something really strong that was pulling me in. A clear entity pulled me out of its way, and that was a beautiful, positive moment. Now, that's quite interesting because some people, you know, they don't have shadow people, but they have like a positive, bright light being, almost angelic, Scott.
I was about to say that. It almost sounds like a guardian angel that may have saved him from some. Right. So you have like these positive entities and these negative entities, and you know, we could be looking at like the spiritual warfare that's going on at this higher level, you know, this battle for people's souls. You know what I mean?
Literally though. I mean, that's what we're talking about here.
The battle between darkness and light. And you know, this battle is going on in a higher dimension. And
Mikhail's bedroom, by the sounds of it, dude, it's going on in higher dimensions, and it's taking place here now.
And it is, I think people are experiencing this stuff more because the veil is being thinned, the veil is being lifted.
You know what I think it looks like now, Scott? When I was in the army, we used to use the paper targets, and we used to have to like go down and paste them, put new bits on after we'd shot them. And there would be times when they'd let you open up 30 rounds automatic, and you would just absolutely obliterate that target. You'd go down to it, and you'd be happy if you got a tight group in, but it was usually the end of the day, and you were just having fun with it. That's what I think the veil looks like. I think it's that shot up right now. There's holes over it everywhere, dude. There's no point trying to paste bits, because as you're pasting bits, there's another bit opening. That's what I honestly feel.
The veil is Swiss cheese at this point, and I think a lot of this has to do with our solar system traversing the galactic plane. I think it has
the
to
shield's
do with us
going down. I was covering a story that Joe sent me the other day. Fox News, they're doing a story. What happens when the Earth's shields go down? Why are Fox News starting to get into this kind of thing? And all of this together, we're in the period of a cycle where this stuff gets very real. And I'm going to be joined by John Sumple tomorrow, like I was mentioning, from the movie Extraordinary, The Seeding. And when it comes to alien hybrid programs and people getting abducted and taken away and probed in the stories that we hear about, that for me isn't any kind of good alien. And in fact, you could argue that kind of alien is highly demonic. And I think it's going to tie in with what we've been talking about this week. But then, folks, I want you all to tune back in on Thursday, because I think we need to cleanse the air. And how synchronistic then that we had organised for Bill Bean to come on at the end of this week to conduct his monthly show. I think it's perfect time, Scott. And Mikhail, with your permission, obviously, I'll be asking Bill to pray for you on the air, and for anyone else out there as well. Bill is very keen sometimes to make sure that, you know, if we can help people during the show, we do that. And I think this is one way. And I want to cleanse our STREAMLABS. I've never had things like this happening tonight, Scott. We need to cleanse our virtual studio here, dude.
Bill literally is the spiritual warrior. That dude, I mean, he's the real deal, I'd say.
Yeah, I speak to Bill for, one time he was driving somewhere, Scott, across the country. It was when he was scared of flying because there was weird things happening with planes. And I think we talked for about near enough an hour and a half, 2 hours. And Bill Bean is exactly the real deal. Exactly the real deal. And he's helped me. He's helped my brother. He's helped my mum. I think it's time to recharge the rebuking and the binding that Bill does with my brother and things. For sure, that's a no-brainer. But for all of you out there as well, and if we are going to be walking down this perilous paranormal path at times, stands to reason that we're going to start sticking out like a sore thumb soon to these very same entities. And it seems to be that they're already latching themselves on to our listeners and people around me and Scott. And I'm not just saying that to be hyperbolic. It's just a way of explaining what we're actually seeing happening right now. So if we're going to do that, Scott, I think it's imperative now that we have Bill on at least once a month to give us some kind of protection. And never forget, folks, see, some people will discount this, and that's okay. And I don't know how much I buy into it, but that last walk round Boleskine House, that throwaway comment where I just said, this place needs Bill Bean and those spiritual warrior angels of his. And then within a week, Scott, within 1 week, that place was not gone, unfortunately, but at least the remainder of the property, the room with the portal, it was down.
It was cleansed by fire.
It says it all, and I'll let people make of that what they will. I'm going to let you all get back to your day. I've had an absolute blast, I really have. You can support the channel in numerous ways, but only if you want to, and only if you can. We've got PayPal as my preferred option, but we have Super Chats, and we've also got the channel memberships. Now, I've introduced something new today where there are 3 options to choose from if you want to be a member. And I've got a very, very introductory £2 offer. It's not even the price of a cup of Starbucks coffee. I've got the $4.99 offer, and there's also a premium offer of $8.99. Now, basically, all 3 tiers are going to get the same content. Maybe once a month, the premium members will get something totally unique. But the reason I've got the 3 price ranges is because maybe some people would like to help out more than others who can't afford it. And at £2, I think that's about as low as I can go, actually, in the settings to allow people to get in. I don't want it to be a closed shop. And even without the memberships, even for all of you out there who can't or don't want to participate in that, as you can see, I don't hold anything back from you. We're here as live as often as we can. Took a day off the safe space stream today because it was just one of those days, feeling a bit groggy, and I wanted to put everything into tonight. And Scott, I think I needed to actually prepare for tonight. Unbeknown to me, this has been a huge night, dude.
Yeah, I mean, A.Marzulli, then rolling into the Black Shadow dude stuff. I mean, you definitely kind of had to focus your attention totally on tonight's show. So took a well-deserved break from the
and stimulating the chat says for $15.99 I can send you some of my used boxer shorts. Little secret. Kev goes commando. And on that horrible, disturbing image and thought, let me bid you all farewell and good night, my friends. And Scotty, hopefully we'll have you back for a safe space soon, or a KBS, something like that. And if not, we will certainly rejoin our powerful mystical forces on Freaky Friday.
Yes, I may be joining you on the safe space on Thursday. This might be more often. We'll see how this goes, and because I'm kind of enjoying these little safe space conversations, and so you might see me popping in a little more often on Thursdays. So
a lot of guest suggestions coming in. We've got Timothy Alberino. Yeah, I like him. You guys knocked it out the park tonight. Logos. I have to thank A.Marzulli, Scott, and in particular, Mikhail. I really, really do. because you know me, it's just my name on the door, but this is a platform for others, and be it Scott's personal stories, be it the absolutely amazing research and documentaries and all the stuff A.Marzulli gets up to, and then the icing on the cake for me, real people, real radio, real stories. I think Mikhail managed to steal the show tonight, Scott. I really do.
I'll have to maybe on Thursday or on Freaky Friday. I'll have to talk about my personal stories.
Yes, please do. And my brother's going to get Skype soon. Kenny, I'm shaming you, man. You want to come into my chat room yesterday and try and woo all the ladies in there, then you have to get Skype. He was, Scott. He was terrible. I'm just panicking because there's a younger, better-looking version of me with a better accent kicking about. What am I going to do, man?
Yeah, good man. He's gonna snipe the chat room, my friend. He's gonna snipe.
You know it. Yes, he's like a walking hormone. I love you, bro. I truly do. But that's enough for tonight. I'll be back tomorrow in the safe space. Remember to join me tomorrow night for John Sumple, and he's the director of Extraordinary: The Seeding, Alien Contactees, Hybrid Programs, Alien Probes, Scott. And this documentary is one of the highest level kind of productions I've seen on this topic. A very serious look at something that's a very real and serious problem for people out there. So until next time, I thank you, Scotty boy. I'm trying to think what music kind of suits for today. I've got, this one's my favourite now, I must admit. So I'll play yous out with this, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in. Remember to hit like on the way out the door. Remember to share the video as well. And if you can tell just one person each, one person, I'm not asking for much, just one more person to come along and share in the KBS antics, you do that. It'll go a long way to taking this show to that next level where me and Scotty and Joe are determined to go. We're going to blow it up, baby. So until next time, good night, God bless, and I'm away to say a good prayer for all of you.
Catch you guys later.
Good tune, Scott. You like it? It's better than the old ones, right? Bit better? Let's get in there.
Yeah. Okay.